Brother wore a mask to scare my girlfriend while she slept, triggering her sleep disorder. She had a ketamine in self-defense and now my family is demanding I break up with her. I, 27M, have been dating my girlfriend, Lola, 22F, for about 2 years now, and overall, things have been great. My brother Ian, 22M, has always been pretty weird whenever she comes up or is around. Ian and I are very close, talking to each other daily, but the conversation will usually change gears as I start talking about anything Lola related. I thought maybe he was jealous of the time I was spending with her or maybe had a little crush on her. Still, whenever we'd get together, he'd make comments about our age gap, poke fun at me for simping, and joke about her sleep disorder. Ian's always enjoyed a good prank, either pranking or being pranked. He loves to laugh, and I genuinely believe that when he goes to prank people, he means it in a way to share the laughter. When he's tried to pull little pranks on Lola, though, he does things that he figured out trigger her disorder, like making sudden loud sounds, jumping out to scare her, and one time, I caught him before he was going to do the shaving cream sleep bit while she was taking a nap in the guest room. I warned him in more detail that he shouldn't mess with her while she's sleeping, as interrupting her regulated cycles isn't good for her, and at the absolute best, she's the worst kind of cranky when she's woken up. Ian looked like he understood, and I thought that was that. I threw a night party a few days ago and invited Ian and a bunch of my and Lola's friends. Everyone was having a good time. My watch went off with the alarm that we set up for Lola to take a nap, she went off with a sleepy smile, and I kept partying. A while later, we all heard a scream, followed soon after by cussing and something breaking. I panicked as it was from my room where Lola was, and I ran through, nearly kicking the door down to find she shoved someone down and was yelling at them. I looked to see who it was and saw a spider mask that I, unfortunately, recognized as Ian's from years ago. I saw him scrambling to get away, but she only stopped when 3 of her friends pushed past me to pull her up and check her before she ultimately passed out in their arms. Ian scrambled off the floor and ripped the mask off, revealing the work she'd managed to do in the time it took us to react. He started bawling, telling me that she was insane and abusive and that he only wanted to make sure she wasn't going to sleep through the ball drop. At this point, everyone started yelling. Ian looked terrified and kept repeating that she was crazy and that I shouldn't be with someone who could do this to her boyfriend's brother. Some of my guys were yelling that if she did it to him, she could do it to me. All of her friends were screaming about how he should know to leave a sleeping girl alone and how it was creepy. Ian ended up calling our mom to tell him that Lola had hurt him, and she was furious. Lola's friends ended up carrying her out against my protests, and my friends were nearly split down the middle. I remember standing there while everyone argued while the ball dropped, my mother calling me for the 10th time, and Lola finally texting me that she needed space to think. Since then, we've lightly texted. She's expressed that she can't shake her fear of what happened, but she still hasn't told me from her side what happened. Ian and my mom are trying to convince me to break up with her, and chastising me for not helping or standing up for my brother when he was being assaulted, also demanding an apology for not playing my part as an older brother. Ian has FaceTimed a few other family members, and now my aunt, who paid for both our colleges and the house my mom and brother live in and helped me get my apartment, is taking the 3-hour drive up to make sure her boys are okay, which is stressing me out even more. On the one hand, I know family is family, and I should do what I can to stand up for the people who helped raise me and become the person I am. On the other hand, Lola is my girlfriend, I adore her, I love her, and I feel like I should be there to protect her. I don't want to push her boundaries, but not talking to her is a different kind of hurt. Ian is convinced that he was playing a well-intentioned prank and was wrongfully punished for wanting to make sure everyone was enjoying themselves. I don't know if I believe that, but I've known Ian for 22 years. Growing up, we were inseparable. I don't want to doubt him just because love may be blinding me. How do I approach the situation with Lola? How can I convince my family that Lola isn't a threat? She's honestly the sweetest and most caring person. She just can't be woken up, and part of me feels like she was pushed to that point. Comments: Grandma's Villa, your brother shouldn't have been in your room when your GF was sleeping there alone. He must have done something to her to scare her and hurt him. Sleeping people don't just wake up and start attacking people unless they felt they are in danger. So ask your GF calmly what really had happened. Also, it is strange that your brother was wearing a mask at the time of the incidents. What was he trying to do to her? Whether your relationship survives or not, it is good to find out what kind of person your brother really is. Throw RA_Utonium op. One of her friends from the party just texted me to chew me out for choking up at the party instead of standing up for Lola. A lot of choice words were said, but the thing that stuck out to me was her calling my brother insensitive for not only disturbing her, but using a phobia against her. It just clicked for me that he had a spider mask. Lola has severe arachnophobia, I know this, and I'm racking my brain trying to think if Ian knew that or if it was bad luck that he decided to pull this stunt with that. Enthusiasm low 3388, not sure what advice you are looking for, but your brother sounds like he is a 9-year-old. Dude is worried about y'all's age gap. Maybe he needs to be more concerned about his maturity. No one thinks pranks are funny, especially the person being pranked. WTF, who messes with someone that is sleeping? That's creepy. Your brother is effed up, and is he jealous of her or is he crushing on her? Good lord. I guess my advice to you is grow a set of balls and distance yourself from your jacked up family or split with your GF so she is free to find someone with a more normal family. 1 Ambition 1558, good God man, your brother scared the hell out of your GF and is trying to get ahead of the story before he can come out looking like the bad guy, because he knows he's in the wrong. He knew better, what he did was premeditated and cruel, and he suffered the consequences. But so did Lola. She wasn't all the way conscious and she was sent into fight or flight, her brain was trying to keep her safe in a triggering situation. Call off the flying monkeys and stand up for your girlfriend who you state is a lovely person. And ask for her forgiveness, because that sounds like a terrible way to ring in the new year, and she should have had your support from the get-go. More info, after my dad left, everyone on my mom's side came together to help her get back on her feet. After she lost her house and was on the brink of losing her kids, too, my mom had my sister and me young, and unfortunately, she couldn't finish high school taking care of young twins, with my grandmother dying soon after. My aunts and extended family all came together to help raise us, get my mom the help she needed, make sure we had what we needed for school life, and really saved us from not just homelessness, but worse. I have such high respect for my family because I know what they did for me. My aunt personally tutored me after I was diagnosed with a learning disability, and it was because of her that I made it to graduation, let alone college. I joke that I wanted to be like her when I grew up. And now, to know that the same people that I owe my very life now to are upset with a choice I made has made me so incredibly anxious. I freeze up thinking about it just like I froze up in that room, and I don't know what to do. I love her, I know I do. I'm flustered. Edit, thank you to everyone who has shared their advice and opinions in comments and DMs, even the more blunt and rude ones, letting me know that in not acting, I was hurting my girlfriend as well. She called me a few minutes ago, and I was so happy to hear her voice. I'm still crying from getting to. She sounded quiet, not like her usual bubbly self, and she didn't say much other than to ask if I was okay and if we could talk tomorrow. I wanted nothing more than to keep talking to her. I apologized over and over, but she thanked me for apologizing and kept changing the subject to where I wanted to meet her tomorrow. We decided on this nice crepe and tea place she likes, one of our first date spots, and then she hung up. I know now that I can't stay impartial. My aunt's going to be at my mom's soon, and I've been pacing my living room, thinking of how I'm going to approach this with my family. I don't want to be rude, but I won't let my tone or language stop me from doing what I should have done in the first place. Ian has given a lot of excuses, but none of them make up for the fact that he's put her through and that I let slide for no good reason. After hearing her voice and how down she sounded, I felt ready for war. She might break up with me, and after reading all of your comments, I'm disgusted with my actions, and I'd leave me too. Update, to everyone who has reached out to me with advice on how I can learn from this shitstorm, thank you. To everyone who has helped me understand that just because family has done a lot for you, it does not mean you're indebted to them and can't have an opinion or life of my own, thank you. To everyone that has reached out to me telling me that I'm such an idiot, I suck as a boyfriend, they hope Lola leaves me, they wish she beat both of us up, thank you. A lot happened yesterday, and frankly, I don't have time to get into everything with police and packing to deal with, but I'll tell you as much as I can. In short, while a lot of you advised me to wait for Lola to tell me her side before I confront my family, they all came over to my apartment yesterday morning while I was writing out a list of questions for them. I was supposed to go over the night before, but I texted them saying I needed time and asked if we could meet later today. They obviously didn't like that and showed up unannounced. The fighting started almost immediately, and I was initially thrown off by them being there, but I matched the energy and started yelling back at them for their predatory and enabling behavior of Ian and how I couldn't believe they'd side with him. My aunt got in my face about disrespect, while my mom cried, and my brother cussed me out, but I yelled back at them that if they genuinely believed Lola was the problem, then they were victim-blaming idiots and that I wanted nothing more than to do with. My mom kept crying, but I got my aunt's attention with the computer, and she got close to look at the screen. I was going through comments to write up all the questions. After a minute, she turned back to us, really my brother, and said, "What is this?" I explained what Reddit was and that I'd posted for help. Ian then stopped comforting mom and pushed past me to get to the computer, asking what right I had sharing family business on the internet. My aunt stopped him and asked, "Why didn't you tell us you were alone with her? You never told me she was sleeping." To say all hell broke loose would be an understatement. Like a switch, my mom almost immediately stopped loudly crying and looked over at my aunt, confused. Ian started shaking his head and reiterating his version of the story, which, listening to it, was infuriatingly off. I'd figured out that not only did he tell mom and our extended family a version of the story in which Lola was all too violent with him when he jumped from behind a door to give her a little spook, but he left out the details that put him in any bad light. I started yelling again, calling him a liar, but he started crying and called me a liar who was just trying to lie for my girlfriend. At the sight of my brother crying, my mom pleaded with us to stop, my aunt scrolling more on the screen. It felt like both a minute and forever that we were yelling in each other's faces about how the night went, how I felt he always used his tears to get his way, him yelling at me about how ungrateful I always was, etc. Unfortunately, I forgot where we were and didn't keep the volume down at all, and sometime later, there was a knock at the door. I didn't know who it could be, some dumb part hoped Lola, though I knew it wasn't. It was two officers, answering a noise complaint from one of the neighbors. Feeling stupid, I plainly explained that no one was hurt and we were having a heated argument, but that no one was in danger. I did let them look around and talk to my mom and brother, but my aunt spoke up when it looked like they were just going to give us a warning. Actually, I think it's good that you're here. My nephew has something he'd like to report. She motioned to Ian, whose eyes looked quickly between her and the officers. My aunt still looked as angry as when she first arrived, but she was glaring at Ian. You know, hypothetically, if someone touches or hits you without permission or justified reason, that's something you can and should report. Is there anything you want to say? There was silence, eyes moving to everyone around the room. My aunt didn't look like she was encouraging him to report. It hit me that she was calling him out. I stared at him, his eyes were bulging, and he looked as panicked as the other night when he had been trying to get away from Lola. One of the officers asked if everything was alright, and like clockwork, Ian started bawling his eyes out. My mom asked him what was wrong. I told her she had to stop babying him. He's been lying to you guys, and my aunt asked him again if he had anything to report. You were up in arms against this girl this morning. Where'd all that fire go? Did she hit you or not? It took a while of us pushing him, but he finally admitted to the room that he didn't have anything to report because he didn't feel like she'd be rightly prosecuted. His next story sounded closer to the one I knew, where he admitted to knowing Lola had gone to sleep and wanted to scare her so she'd wake up, that he put on a mask. He said he knew she found them creepy, and that there was no one else in the room with them. He couldn't get any of our friends to agree to the prank, so he did it himself. He said he started making sounds against the wall. The bed was against the wall and then got close to screaming in her face. He said she woke up and surprised him because he thought the stress and panic would cause her to scream or hide, but she went for his throat instead. He described his beating to everyone in the room, some of which I saw had the officers look at each other and then back at him. That's when I pushed the door in, and you know the rest. I'm sure if the police weren't there, I would have hit him. I know I would have. My mom started crying even more when he said she was sleeping, a fact that changed his entire story. My aunt chewed him out, everyone scolding him for his stupidity and asshole behavior. At the same time, the officers explained that it sounded like if what he said was true, Lola acted in self-defense, and that not only was what he did juvenile, but one of the officers asked my mom's permission to question him more as his behavior was concerning. They wanted to make sure he wasn't a danger to himself or others. My aunt and I told the cops he was 22 at the same time, an adult, and they didn't need her permission. He looks a lot younger than he is. Upon hearing his age, one of the officers sat down with him and asked him to talk through his thought process, and the other officer explained to my mom and aunt that Lola could press charges, given Ian's story. My aunt still looked pissed while my mom cried about being confused and over her baby. My mom literally looked at me and said she didn't understand how her baby could do this. I already knew I was deep in the bullshit of this family, but I realized that I couldn't grow in the earth that poisoned me, and I needed to get away if I was actually going to get better and stay better. My mom kept fussing with my aunt and another uncle on the phone, crying over the drama, while I texted a friend of mine who lives across the city to ask if I could stay with him. I was feeling overwhelmed with all of them and didn't want to be within a few minutes of the source of the problem. I also wanted to give myself space to think and understand with a clear head. My aunt saw me in my room doing this, but she didn't stop me. She only asked me if I'd spoken to Lola about this, and I told her I hadn't yet, but I had plans to later on. She told me she was sorry for believing my brother without listening to any other account and that she hoped Lola was okay. So then it was just me in the apartment. The cops left after taking a statement from my brother and me. My mom left with my brother, still crying, my brother calling me an asshole, the world's worst brother, and my aunt hugged me, apologizing again for how she and her sister acted and told me that I don't owe her anything, but that she'd like to know that Lola's okay. With everyone gone, I went to my friend's house, and I'll be there until further notice. He couldn't make it to the party, but he had heard about it from multiple people. As far as Lola, yes, we did meet. As excited as I was to see her, I knew that most of you were telling me she was going to break up with me, so I'd been preparing for that. Whether I ended up single or not, I wanted to make sure she was okay above all. I know I don't deserve her as a girlfriend, and I'd much rather she not be with me if it meant she was safe. She brought a friend with her, and we all sat and talked. I showed them both the Reddit post, and Lola has asked that I not share any more information about her until she feels ready herself. She approved the information I'm giving you. She did, however, read a lot of the commenters worried about her and wanted me to express to you all that, while upset, hurt, and with mixed up emotions, she is overall okay. She doesn't like that I posted about her without at least giving her a heads up, but after I offered to take the post down, she only asked that I give her time and leave her personal life and her opinions out of anything beyond what I've already said here until she says otherwise. In short, she did break up with me, and when I told her about the police telling us that she could press charges, her friend laughed and told me that they were more than aware. She thanked everyone for their concern and told me she really hoped we both learned from this. So yeah, unless I'm forgetting something, that's all I have right now. My mom has been calling and texting me, telling me that this whole ordeal has made Ian and her a wreck, and she can't believe I'd let a girl do this to us. I blocked my brother right after he left my apartment, and I just blocked her. My aunt has let me know she'll talk to her, but I don't know how that's going to go. I understand that it isn't what everyone wants, but none of this is anything I want, either. To everyone who has nothing but bad things to say about me, I get it, I'm an asshole. I appreciate any advice I've been given. I'm going to be taking a break from not only the BS in my life but this Reddit stuff too. I know I have a lot of growing to do, and I can't do that in this environment. Thank you again to everyone. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Caught my wife sleeping with our daughter's boyfriend in our vacation home basement. Now we're divorcing, and daughter wants nothing to do with her mom. My wife and I had been married for 25 years before we got divorced. We had our struggles, but we always managed to work through everything and come out stronger. Neither of us wanted children when we got together. We were very career focused and we wanted to ensure that we could live happy lives with a moderate amount of wealth. About 5 years into our marriage, my wife had a change of heart. After careful consideration, we decided that we would try to have a child. It turned out to be the best decision of our lives. We had a baby girl. For the sake of this, let's call her Emily. She has been the light of our lives ever since she was born. Admittedly, we might have spoiled her quite a bit. She was an only child and we wanted to make sure she had everything she wanted. That being said, she still had responsibilities that she had to take care of before she got things. When Emily moved away for college, it was one of the hardest days of our lives. Everything we had been doing for the past 18 years was dedicated to our daughter and she was gone. We knew that it was just a step forward for her and that it wasn't the end of our relationship, but still, it was a bit of a struggle. After her first year in college, we had gotten used to her absence. We still missed her and we valued the time we had when she would come home for breaks, but it was almost like we had the life we originally envisioned when we got married. We were traveling and going and doing things that we couldn't have done with a child. During Emily's sophomore year of college, she ended up studying abroad for a semester. She studied in Italy where she met her boyfriend, let's call him Joey. She had many boyfriends growing up, but none were quite like Joey. She adored him. The way she talked about him made it seem like she knew he was the one for her. My wife and I were both excited to meet him because he seemed to be an all-around great guy. Because he lived in Italy, getting together for dinner was a little difficult. But the summer after her sophomore year, we invited him along to our lake house for our vacation. We had bought the lake house 5 years prior and had gone every summer since then. Joey was still a student, so we paid for his plane ticket to come and see us because we just really wanted to meet him. My wife and I instantly liked him. He was charming and handsome with a good head on his shoulders. He was studying to be a surgeon and was apparently at the top of his class. At the end of dinner, I was practically begging my daughter to marry him. Apparently, my wife also really liked him. Just in a very different way than I did. I noticed during dinner that she would blush whenever he complimented her. At first, I thought it was kind of funny. He was a cute younger guy who was telling my wife that she looked good for her age and my wife was falling for his charm. Throughout the rest of the week, the two of them developed an interesting relationship. It was very flirty. It made me uncomfortable, but I didn't want to draw too much attention to it for my daughter's sake. I mentioned it to my wife and she told me that my concerns were nonsense. He was just Italian, and Italian men were like that. Maybe I was being naive, but I believed her. It was the 4th day of our vacation when I ended up coming down with quite a bad migraine. I would get them from time to time over the years, and whenever I felt one coming on, the best thing for me to do was just to sleep. All the time in the sun was really not helping keep it away, so I took off early from an outing to go home. They don't usually take too long to clear up as long as I can get some decent rest. I drew back the curtains in my room and put a pillow over my head after popping a few Excedrin and I fell asleep instantly. I woke up hours later, completely unaware of what time it even was. Thankfully, my migraine was gone. Even though my migraine was gone, I was starving. I looked at the clock and saw that it was a little after midnight, so I tiptoed through the house to make a sandwich in the kitchen. My wife wasn't in bed when I left, though I figured she might have just passed out in a guest room or on the couch to avoid waking me. I wasn't too concerned with that. I walked by my daughter's room and saw that she was in bed asleep. Her boyfriend wasn't there with her and again didn't think much of it. I got to the kitchen and started trying to open the cabinets and fridge as quietly as possible to avoid waking up my daughter. Then I heard the giggling. I froze to get a better idea of what I was hearing. From the porch outside, I could hear Joey saying something in Italian and my wife giggling at it. At first, I thought it was just the harmless banter she had told me so much about. Then I heard a little bit of moaning. Right away, I walked over to the window and peeked through it. My wife was straddling Joey and he was kissing her neck. She had been wearing one of those long dresses and it was raised up above her hips just enough for me to see that they were indeed having sex. My wife was having sex with my daughter's boyfriend on the front porch of our lake house while my daughter and I were both upstairs asleep. I was completely frozen in place as I tried to figure out what to do. My wife was cheating on me. With my daughter's boyfriend. I was at a complete loss for words. They continued what they were doing and all I could think to do was pull out my phone and take a video of it for evidence against them. They were talking to each other while they were having sex and mentioning how they wanted to go inside to the basement again. That made me think that maybe it wasn't the first time they were together. I just went back upstairs and tried to think about what to do. If it wasn't the first time they were together, it couldn't have been some drunk mistake. Even then, it's unacceptable, but maybe it would be easier to digest if I knew they weren't in their right minds. To do it twice was extremely intentional. As I was lying in bed, I heard them make their way into the basement. There was a little bit of ruckus as they walked through the darkness and made their way to the door. It almost sounded like an intruder. Which is when I had the bright idea to catch them in the act. After hearing them, I jumped out of bed and grabbed the baseball bat that I had behind my door. I went into my daughter's room and quickly woke her up, telling her that I heard something in the basement. I told my daughter to stay where she was, but knowing her that wasn't going to happen. I tiptoed down the stairs pretending like I thought I was going to have to use my bat to fight off some criminal. My daughter was just steps behind me peeking out to see what was going on. We made it to the basement and all of the lights were on. We heard Joey and my wife having sex before we saw anything. They were hardly making an effort to be quiet. It was almost like they wanted to be caught. When we saw them, both my daughter and I screamed at them. They were completely naked and there was absolutely no denying what was happening. Right away, I regretted waking up my daughter for that. I should have been the one to catch them and I should have shielded her from what she saw, but I wasn't thinking. They tried to cover themselves and explain what was happening, but it was just senseless rambling. My daughter stormed away and I followed behind her. We both started packing our things to go back home. We didn't care what happened with either Joey or my wife, we just needed to get out of the house. My wife tried to tell me that it was a mistake, but I just told her to leave me alone. I had a lot I needed to figure out and I didn't need her in my ear trying to talk me out of my decision. My daughter and I drove back home in complete silence, both terribly upset about what we saw. When I got home, I started looking into divorce attorneys. My daughter helped me look. After a few hours in the morning, we sat down together and had a conversation. She was mortified by what she saw and she didn't think she was ever going to be able to look at her mother again, much less have a relationship with her. What I didn't know was that my daughter had spoken to my wife just a couple of days before about how much she loved Joey. They had been talking about marriage and she thought it was a possibility for her. They had been considering marriage after she graduated. I was heartbroken for my daughter and completely furious with my wife. Cheating is never okay, but cheating with your own daughter's partner is disgusting. I went through with the divorce. My wife and I both worked and we split all of the bills evenly for everything, so in the divorce everything was evenly divided. To this day, my daughter doesn't talk to her mother. What she did was completely unforgivable and I can't blame her one bit for avoiding her.